Hello and welcome. I'm Maite Moreno Ugartemendia, and this is a new episode of Proyecto Co, the podcast channel of Efecto Colibri, a channel inspired by the words that start with co, community, consciousness, co-creation, co-evolution, and, of course, colibri, which in Spanish means hummingbird. We have honest conversations with change makers to explore mindsets and initiatives for positive change. The stories we tell and the stories we listen to have the power to regenerate our perception of ourselves and others. Stories regenerate. This is why at Efecto Colibri we produce and distribute podcast content to inspire you to create a just, equitable, and regenerative reality for all. Discover more at www.efectocolibri.com. What if our own body held the keys to heal our pain? What if movement, imagination, and self-expression are exactly what we need to thrive? Ari Honarvar is an artivist. She taps into different art forms to bring about positive change. She's an award-winning writer, speaker, and artist. She dedicates her life to build bridges between the arts, social justice, and well-being. Ari hosts dance sessions with refugees across conflict-ridden borders. Ari is the Iranian musical ambassador of peace. Hi, Ari. Really nice to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And to frame our interview, I would like to ask you, what would this conversation have to be like to be nourishing for you?
That's such a thoughtful and loving question. I'm already at ease, having had a previous heart-to-heart with you. So I learned about your beautiful presence in the world, and I look forward to learning more. And so I just say, let's follow our own natural rhythm, our resonance, and the flow of the conversation and see where it takes us.
Sounds good. So, how would you like to introduce yourself in a few lines and maybe from a holistic point of view, integrating all of who you are?
Yeah, I would say holistically, I would describe myself as a mender. And that mending sometimes takes form in the shape of reparative rehumanization when dancing with refugees who are often dehumanized, scapegoated, and demonized, or bringing refugee stories to light in journalism. It sometimes shows up as tapping into the power of imagination and poetry in my fiction, or bringing that mending and restoration in practical ways, in resilience through joy that stabilize and ground and integrate us in the world. And recently I've noticed that there isn't a common word that describes humanity of animals and plants and all of our other relations on the planet. We have such a human-centric and exclusionary perspective, and which can really become more inclusive. And ironically, it'll help us restore and mend the increasing fragmentation within ourselves in the modern world. So I'm searching for a more inclusive word than humanity that encompasses all our relations, because words really contain so much power and can shift perspective. And mending our relationship with the earth and all its inhabitants is also a priority for me.
So nice, and it's related to the work we are doing at Efecto Colibri. We say that stories regenerate. That's the power of words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were born in Iran, and you've lived pretty much of your childhood there during the Iran-Iraq war, and then you immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 14, I mean. Yes. So if you look back at that early period of your life, what were the most significant episodes?
Yeah, so imagine being 14 years old and being thrown into a different planet. I was so bewildered. New language, new smells, new tastes, new humans. Nothing that reminded me of home. And there was so much homesickness and depression and anxiety in the first year because there was no anchor for me. I truly missed my family and friends and everything that reminded me of home. So there was that, and I also, what's interesting that I wore a really strange combo of clothing because of all the restrictions on the freedom of expression in Iran. There was a war on joy. There was a war on color. So I wore all colors of the rainbow. In Iran, you couldn't wear colorful clothes. So in the US, I just, as you know, I look like a teenager who is trying to channel a tropical bird, and so that was really fascinating. That's how I wanted to manifest my freedom of expression. I also watched MTV a lot and danced because this is the time where MTV was playing music, and music and dancing was illegal in Iran. And I also watched Days of Our Lives, which is a soap opera, a popular soap opera that's been going on for many, many years. And that's how I learned English in a short period of time. But one of the funny things that happened was that I learned to be sassy and kind of very dramatic, like the soap opera divas. And that was really hilarious while I'm learning English. So, like, someone would ask me an innocuous question, and I would say with so much sass and flair, "What is that supposed to mean?" Something like that. And because I thought that's how people spoke, right? So it was a lot of trial and error trying to live, integrate myself into this new world that was my home now.
I can imagine. I can imagine. And what was it like to make the decision to leave your country? Because as far as I know, you left without your parents at um, when you were a teenager.
Yes. So I came as under extraordinary circumstances. My parents actually came with me, and because they accompanied me here, but they left me because I wasn't safe in Iran. My sister's classmate, who was a senior in high school, was executed. Many of her friends in half of the senior class was in prison, and I was getting into a lot of trouble with the morality police. Just a lot of close calls. They never caught me, but there was a chance, I would write anti-regime graffiti on walls and do take risky, like wear colorful clothing, or the morality police would chase me. And so they were like, all right, we need to get you out of here. And that's how I came to the US.
Thanks for sharing. When and how did you find music, writing, dancing, and how did it help you?
Yeah, so dancing and music came right away. Naturally, I tapped into, I was like gravitated to healthy pleasures like dancing when I came here. And, that's a way of, I learned that that was a way of helping me mitigate the trauma that I had experienced in Iran, pretty much. Um, since I was 6 to 14, I was under war and oppression and duress, and through so many different channels. and just being so close to death so much, and being around death so much, and being around heartache and other people's trauma. So that was one way that there's a body of research that shows that music and dancing really help with trauma, with anxiety, depression, recovery, addiction, so many other things. So that, my body knew that. My mind didn't know any of that, but my body knew all of that. So I definitely danced a lot, and that helped with the homesickness and depression and anxiety. Writing took its time. It wasn't until a decade after leaving Iran and being in the U.S. that poetry tugged at my heart like a long lost beloved. It was particularly Rumi's poetry that came rushing back. And I would find myself at gatherings among other Americans. When someone would ask me a question, just like in Iran, I would answer in poetry, in a verse of poetry. And I would do it in Farsi. And people didn't say, "Oh my God, she's gone mad, let's take her out." It was like, "Oh my God, that's just so beautiful. That language is so beautiful. The verse is so musical. It goes right into my heart without knowing what it means. Can you translate for us?" And then I started translating Rumi's poetry. And a friend, Whitley Smith, as I was reciting poetry and translating it, he said, "That's Rumi with a view." So that's how the name RumiWithAView.com became my the umbrella under which I do all my work.
It's amazing that so many years later, because Rumi was an early poet, his words are still alive and true, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many verses that are so pithy and so relevant. And I don't think they'll ever go out of relevance.
Yeah. And I remember a story you told in the TED Talk you offer about reciting Rumi's poetry in the middle of a bombing.
Yeah, so the TED Talk that I gave that was published recently, was titled "When Savoring a Pleasant Moment is a Radical Act." And it's about the art of savoring, the practice of savoring, and the term savoring intervention, which scientists give to what I describe, and that is, rather than focusing on the stress and all the horror that's going around us, when we tap into pleasant moments and savor what we deem as pleasurable in the moment, that can actually help us have more capacity to deal with challenges. And that episode that you're speaking of is like when there was threat of bombs and there was blackouts and we were feeling brave. We would go to our rooftop and we would watch the aircraft missiles shoot up into the air, and I was just in awe of these beautiful patterns in the sky as a 7-year-old. Like it was 4th of July. They were so magnificent, but underneath that awe, there was such a terror of who was going to die next. Was it going to be my sister, my best friend, my teacher? And then someone would shout a Rumi verse like "بر همگان گرز فلک زهر ببارد همه شب من شکراندر 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 شکرم." And that means, even if from the sky poison befalls all, I am still sweetness, wrapped in sweetness, wrapped in sweetness, wrapped in sweetness. And and that, even as a 7-year-old, that verse would go into my heart and radiate to every cell of my being until I felt like I was living in a 13th century poet's world of mystical delights rather than in the middle of a war. Like I was everything and nothing at the same time. And what bomb could ever touch that?
Thanks for sharing that. It was so beautiful. Where did you start offering those practices which help you in your healing journey to others?
I joined Musical Ambassadors of Peace, a nonprofit that focuses on the power of music and dancing to heal war wounds. In about 2015. And now I run music and dance circles specifically for refugees because I want to give them what was denied to me as a child, which was the healing power of music and dancing, and what I longed for as a newcomer, as a 14-year-old in a strange country, which was a sense of community. And so I began collaborating with Musical Ambassadors of Peace at the height of the anti-Muslim and anti-refugee sentiments, and also at the height of the Syrian war, where a lot of refugees were coming to San Diego, where I live. And so that's when I asked Musical Ambassadors of Peace, I'm like, how can I help these Syrian refugees? I want to do more than just bring donations. And they said, start a drum circle. And I was like, what? How is that going to help? And it turns out there is, again, a body of research. Drumming and dancing and all of that is so helpful in healing from war. So they became super popular, these drum and dance circles. I danced with Syrian, Iraqi, Afghan, and Iranian refugees for a number of years until the Muslim ban happened and no new refugees were coming to the U.S. Then I shifted my focus to Mexico, where a lot of asylum seekers were coming from Central America and Mexico and South America and Haiti to seek asylum in the U.S. And the child separation thing was happening, and it was just really horrific. And as a journalist, I was reporting on all of that, and then I was like, I need to bring this to these families as well. So I switched gears, and now I have programs on both sides of the U.S. Mexico border.
That's an amazing work. And I'm curious about what happens during the sessions. What would you say?
One of the things that we do is we harmonize our bodies through warm-ups. Music and dancing evolved long before language. So it's so natural for us to do that, and when we do movements together, when we vocalize together, when we smell something wonderful like an essential oil together, it all allows us to amplify this savoring, a thousand folds, because we're such mammals, we're such social creatures. So we're savoring together. And then we dance, and we use the five senses. We share a meal together, and we laugh. I pay attention to those who are disabled or are not, that are particularly suffering, and try to see if it's best to engage them or spend some time afterwards with them to make sure that they're okay, that they're getting their needs met. So that, and then we have a closing ceremony where we come together and we say, in whatever language that I'm working with, like in Spanish, we say, "Somos una familia sin fronteras." We are all one family without borders, and we hold hands. We come together. We say it 3 times, and we have a meal together. And sometimes, if I have time, we draw our feelings or how we're doing, or we journal about it. That's and it bolsters that savoring sensation and that the effects of what happened during the sessions. Now, afterwards, the shelter director and some of the refugees I work with tell me that these people, there's just so much more camaraderie and collaboration, less bickering, less and more a sense of well-being. Like a lot of people after the sessions, they say, my headache is gone, or I was so depressed before, now I can't remember what I was depressed about, so it just kind of it's miraculous. Whenever I bring volunteers to these sessions, at the end, no one leaves without a dry eye. They were all crying because it's such a beautiful, yet so simple and so human way of being together.
We've talked about imagination. So I wonder, what is the role of imagination in stress and trauma relief?
Yeah, so most of us have a pretty dysfunctional relationship with our imagination. Our imagination is this built-in virtual reality, natural intelligence machine that's free, requires no subscription fee, is available to us 24/7, no self reception or Wi-Fi is required, and is available wherever we are. And most of us use our imagination for worrying or predicting all the things that could go wrong in our lives. And there's good reason for that, which if you listen to my TED Talk, you will see what it is. But we haven't learned to tap into this fantastic resource for well-being and thriving under even grueling circumstances. And this is one of the reasons why I wrote my novel, A Girl Called Rumi, because growing up in a place that death by missiles or persecution was lurking at every corner, I as a kid, tapped into the power of imagination to survive. And the novel is based on my experience as a 9-year-old girl in war-torn Iran, where morality police is just ready to pounce on you, imprison you, disappear you, execute people, even children. And the main character and her best friend happen upon a portal under the missile ruins, and they befriend a mysterious storyteller in a palatial, magical underground inn that draws them into this mystical realm of the poets and the mythical creatures. And that's what sustains them during the war and the destruction that reigns in the external world. So we use our imagination anyway. And right now, most of the time, the way that we use our imagination adds to our cognitive load and shrinking us rather than allowing us to become more expansive and increase our capacity to deal with challenges.
Let me remind you something you said that caught my attention. You said, what is pleasurable is sustainable. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Of course, yeah. So working with a lot of activists, I see that burnout and compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma are real. And that's one of the reasons I've begun offering workshops that use joy as a sustainable fuel to keep us going through mounting challenges, and helping the helper so they can sustain, so they can provide for what they're passionate for, vulnerable populations. What I've noticed, as I said earlier, humans naturally tend to gravitate toward actions that are easy for us and are pleasurable, like dancing and singing and savoring. Now, most people are familiar with the dark side of pleasure, which is addiction. The difference between partaking in healthy pleasures and addictive pleasures or addictive behavior is that healthy pleasures are here to sustain us, whereas addiction is here with addiction, you're here to sustain the addiction. So, so you arrange your whole life around sustaining the addiction, or we arrange our whole life around sustaining the addiction, where we need to be, just partaking of sustainable pleasures that conspire to support us.
So you are doing an amazing work, and it's so vast that I really want our listeners to catch a glimpse of it. Can you tell us the titles of the programs you are offering now, and maybe a brief summary?
Okay, I'll try to be as
And you're a journalist and a writer, so you can do it.
Right. Well, I also love to play. I love creativity. I love social experiments. I'm the founder of Rumi with a View, that's dedicated to building bridges between the arts, social justice, and well-being. So I talked about the Resilience Through Joy programs, and also dancing with refugees on both sides of the U.S. Mexico border. But I also have a drop Poems Not Bombs project, in which wonderful American musicians learn a line of poetry in Farsi and put it to music as a love letter to the people of Iran, because the two countries struggle with diplomatic relations, and this is one way to maintain cultural bridges. And then in Iran last September, we had the women-led uprising after the death of Mahsa Amini, who was the morality police weren't saying that she wasn't observing proper hijab, and then she was killed in police custody. And so, as a response to, as a way of support of the protesters, I founded the Dance for Freedom Project, which employs pleasurable power of dancivism to bring support to the Iranian protesters who are expressing themselves on the street and dancing, which is illegal. And all 7 continents and thousands of people from around the world have participated in this movement. And then I have a few local community projects, community building projects that are replicable. Like in 2018, I came up with the arranged friendship concept, which is supposed to be the antidote to toiling in the friendless desert of modern adulthood. And the idea has become quite popular after it was featured on the Washington Post and the Atlantic, and people are replicating it. And then a couple of years ago, I published Rumi's Gift Oracle Card Deck as a way of bringing elements of the Western tarot and the ancient Persian divination traditions together. And the deck has image cards embedded with Persian poetry and poem cards in Farsi and English, as well as a booklet of translations and meditations. And then I talked about my novel, A Girl Called Rumi, which has won literary awards and was named one of the best books of 2022 by Kirkus Review, which I'm super excited about because the publication, Kirkus Review, is synonymous with the gold standard of book reviews in the publishing industry, and they're very tough reviewers. So, and I'm also a speaker and speak at universities, churches, nonprofits, and bring awareness to savoring practices, to women's rights, to refugee rights, and the power of poetry and the arts.
Mm.
That was a lot.
I was thinking that you're like the embodied version of an artivist. Do you consider as such?
I suppose. I guess I'm just a human who is trying to be the best human, that at least the most human that they can be. Like they're just get into it. I'm not much of a perfectionist, so I'm not like striving to be the best. I just want to do right by my relationships and use creativity to do so.
That's even better. And reflecting About all that you've been working on, can you recall a especially touching experience you have had?
I guess my mind immediately goes to the dance circles and dancing with kids and my grandkids who've been through so much, little kids who are sometimes in the corner shivering because of the trauma that they've experienced. And they're cold. It would be in the heat of July or August, and they're wearing, coats and have blankets on because that's kind of what trauma does sometimes. It lowers the body temperature. And so when they see the adults dancing and not having a care in the world, adults who've been so preoccupied and so traumatized themselves put their worries aside and just dance to the song that they grew up with, that they had good memories with, they start thawing out. You just watch these kids like come in and just mimic the adults and do the turns and the salsa or merengue or the bachata or uh, whatever music that we're dancing with, and so then the adults see the kids, and it's just they become so delighted that this is what's happening with the kids, and so there's just this feedback, and everyone just keeps getting more joyful and more resonant with each other in a really beautiful way, and that's always so heartwarming to see.
To become resonant with each other. What a beautiful way to put it.
Mm.
And can you share with us three practices to take care of your own well being as an artist, as a journalist, as a creative and sensitive person?
Yeah, thank you for that question. One thing that I do is that I move my body every day. I go for a run in the morning almost every day. And just to get the blood flowing, not like 5 miles or anything, but sometimes 20, 25 minutes of running to get ideas going in my head, just get the creative juices flowing. And I have a very robust savoring practice. So just naturally, I notice things that are beautiful to my eyes, and I savor and I linger with it. It works to be out in nature. I have a front yard that I have some plants that I can look at butterflies and the bees, and I have pe- a a pet cat who's very fuzzy, and I, savor petting him, and also that relationship with other my loved ones, whether it's a hug or playing game at night or several hugs or having a really loving conversation together, and telling them what I appreciate about them and receiving what they appreciate about me if they have it. Those things are so nurturing to me.
Thanks for sharing. And is there anything else you would like to share with us, or maybe a final message, or whatever you want?
Yeah, I my main focus is been relationships, and as a species, we've prioritized relationships for millennia. But right now, we're contending with so many powerful opposing forces that we've never had to do. It's been unprecedented, like the traditional and social media, the pharmaceutical industry, the cosmetic industry, the diet industry. They all profit from our disconnection from our bodies, from our environment, from each other. And then the busyness of life in this transactional world doesn't leave us with much room to foster healthy relationships. And as a result, we live in an age of loneliness. And loneliness, just a Surgeon General warning was saying that it's worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you smoke 15 cigarettes a day and have healthy relationships, like a robust social life, it's better for you than having no addiction to cigarettes, no smoking cigarettes, but having zero friends or zero or anemic social life. So that's one of those things, that we need to focus on, is like keep exploring creative ways of how can we bolster our relationships and with each other, with our environment, with the divine, with our imagination. So I would say that that's a priority for me, and I can see that being something that can be good for many, many people.
That's my priority too. Thanks. Thanks. And thanks for this insightful, heart opening, stimulating, inspiring conversation. I, I really hope you keep offering your gifts and art wherever it's needed. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I'm so glad we had this chance to talk.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. You can find all the references of the episode on our website, www.efectocolibri.com/proyectoco. If you like it, rate us with 5 stars, leave us a comment, and share it with your network. This will help us reach more people and make social innovation become the norm. In advance, thank you. If you have questions, feedback, or want to introduce us to a guest for the podcast, you can write directly to us at maitena@efectocolibri.com. See you next time!